everybody, and welcome into the best time of the year. We enter in after 10 hard weeks of playing ball. We are finally to the peak of the season. It's the playoffs, baby. They're here. We're talking about it the next 2 days. Heck, we're broadcasting it on the network tomorrow. Make sure you're either at a game or tuning into the game because it is must-see game time.
Yeah.
I'm Alec Caberna. That's Mike Wolfgang. This is a Casual Sports Podcast on your sports network. Hope everyone's had a good week so far because it's about to get a heck of a lot better, isn't it, Mike?
This is the best month of the year for sports. Always is. Playoff time with high school football. World Series getting underway tomorrow night, so that's something else. People aren't watching high school football, which they should be, but that's something else you can watch.
Yeah, nobody wants to watch the Astros and the Phillies in a World Series, especially not in this area.
I'm just saying on the network, but yeah, there's a lot going on. It's the best time of year.
Well, I'm just saying, I know we got a lot of Pittsburgh fans, and I don't think too many of them like that Phillies group, and nobody likes Houston, so I'm expecting not to see very great viewership for this World Series.
I'll watch because I'm a fan, but I'm just gonna watch. I don't like either. It's an old school rival. Houston, nobody likes them, like you said, so it's just the World Series.
It's just the World Series.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, that might just be the World Series, but this is the Ohio high school playoffs.
Yeah.
And I'm ready for it. And you know who's really ready for it? Mother Nature, because she's coming out tomorrow night and going, all right, you guys, I gave you guys a week off of this colder temperatures. We're getting back down to it. A high of 52 at kickoff at 7 p.m. here in the Youngstown region. Obviously, this will vary depending where you are. Getting down to probably around 48, maybe 45 degrees, depending on where you are for tomorrow night's football. Not looking like a ton of wind, but, you know, it's going to be one of those nights where you're going to be holding your breath. It's going to be cold, and because of the weather, upsets are going to take place, and you have to watch out for it. Be ready for your team to pull off the biggest upset. Be respectable in the crowds and in the stands. No rushing the field. We can't do that here at this level. That's a large security risk. Please don't do that. But get hyped in your seats because I'm expecting some big upsets or some big games, some big moments to happen this week, and maybe some struggles from a couple of our top seeds.
You could see it. We talked about the last couple weeks as the weather has started to go down, that it changed the way teams play offense. I mean, Lowville's still a strong team, but for example, some of their point totals have gone down. So it's not always about the weather, but it's just the inconsistency with it. Because just look out here. I mean, the first 2 days this week, it was nice and 60 and 70. Yesterday was cold and rainy, so it's just hit or miss.
Right. So you've gone from the beginning of the week practicing in the warm. Now you're going to get back to a Friday game where it's cold again, and it's this constant influx of the weather that we, as you pointed out, we have seen in kind of the biggest ones that I think we have to circle to go in, and it'll be my game, Valley Christian. I don't like who they're going up against. I don't think it's going to be a problem there, but you said the same thing about Wellsville a week ago, and Wellsville came in and they were beating Valley Christian at the half, and it took until that second half in late stages for Valley to get into that game and ultimately come out on top. And maybe one of the biggest things you remember about Valley going into this weekend, they haven't liked the colder temperatures. I mean, you looked at it. Southern game was low scoring. Wellsville was low scoring. They didn't play East Palestine, so they got a bye week in week 10. So they didn't get a warm weather game back. And now you go into the playoffs not playing in John Napick. Remember, here in the postseason, Valley's going to be playing down in Boardman at Spartan Stadium. So a whole new atmosphere for them as well. I'm hoping since Boardman didn't get in, maybe those Boardman fans will go support the War Eagles down there. But I think that's a team we have to be hunting here early on, potentially on upset alert, because they haven't played very well in this weather.
And Boardman Field is turf. Is Valley Christian's field turf?
Yes.
So that's not a huge adjustment, but it's different scenery, like you said, different weather, and different type of crowd too. There could be some Boardman people straggling in there.
Yeah, so it's going to be very interesting, in my opinion. I don't think Trinity is going to have a ton of people travel out to this game, so I'm not really worried about that aspect of it. But, there's a couple of things I think playing against Valley. They still have all the talent. We'll talk about that game a little bit later on. But it's one of just a handful of games I think we have to watch out for as potential upset. So let's get started here, Mike. Mayfield on the road taking on Austin Town Fitch, who has put together a phenomenal season, 9-1. Everybody knows the story, and I think it all culminated with the win over Warren G. Harding in Week 10 of the season, which, no, isn't a monumental woohoo kind of game, but I think it just proved to everybody just once more how legit this team was here at the end of the season, going up against a Harding team that for the most part had stuck it close to every single team they had played until Fitch in that final week. So I think Fitch is rolling in here with a lot of momentum. And you look on the other side with this Mayfield team, they lost their last game out to Kenston. It was a road game for them. That's a 7-3 Kenston team. This is a 9-1 Fitch. And, you look back on the wins for Mayfield. It's against a 2-8 Madison was their last win. Then you got Eastlake North, who's a 1-9 school, and they still allowed 21 points in that game. Willoughby South, they won by 7 points. Willoughby is under 500 on the year. They have losses to Riverside and Chardon and Nordonia. 3 playoff teams. I think Kenston got in as well. So every loss has come to a playoff team. A win over, I think, a 1-win Kenmore, 4 or 5-win Massillon Jackson, a 5-win Massillon Jackson, and then Cleveland East Shaw. They won that game, and that's a 2-8 team. So they haven't really had a strength of schedule that is going to give us much to prepare for, kind of how they're going to play against Fitch. I'm not overly excited for an upset in this game. I think this should be pretty clear cut and dry in favor of Fitch.
Yeah, and as you ran through their resume, Fitch's resume looks pretty good too. Yeah. I mean, I again, they can kind of excuse that Massillon Washington loss, but they looked pretty good, close to dominant all year, kind of in the way we've been talking about South Range all year. I don't expect too much of an upset here. I think they just have a lot of talent. Talent doesn't always win games, but they got a lot of talent, and they all know how to play together. And this one's at home too. I think for home playoff games, they get a lot of them there. Obviously, they're pretty good. It's a good program for every sports there, or school for every sports. But that's a tough place to go play. And I think when you're playing a team that's not too much familiar with you, you're hosting them, and you're better than them. I just feel like Fitch pretty much has this one.
Yeah, and I'm gonna just double check to see if they've ever played one another really quick. Well, at least not in the last 20 years. So these two teams never met. So, to your point, whole new opponent to go up against. Yeah. I mean, you do look at Mayfield. Historically, they have been a pretty good team. I mean, not too often are they having losing seasons. They are coming off of one last year, so it's a rebuilding group. But really, I mean, this is a team this is about where they've been every year. They've had a couple of big runs back in 2014 season. I think they made a deep run towards the state championship. Was really the last time they were 9-3 back in the 2019 season. But I look at this Mayfield squad as more of just a warm up for Fitch in this first round, especially because I look at Fitch and I look at this upcoming schedule of what they might have to face after this. And I know you never want to get caught looking ahead. Luckily, we're not the team, so we can do that. We can look ahead because we're just the broadcasters here talking about it. But on the schedule next, likelihood, I think Akron St. Vincent St. Mary is going to beat John Hay out of Cleveland. John Hay is one of the biggest pretenders with that 7-3 record. St. V is a pretty good team, as Ursuline saw. And you look there, okay, well, you're going to have St. V next week. After that, you have what might be the number one team in the region, in this division, maybe not even just the region, and Archbishop Hoban, who's, just right down 76 going west. They're on that highway going off towards Akron, going to be a straight shot over there. And that matchup really is just one I have to look at, and it worries me for Fitch that if they can get through St. V and Mayfield, they're going to be worn out, and then you go up against a Hoban team that would likely have beaten Willoughby South and, to their credit, a decent Barberton. I don't want to insult my grandmother's alma mater over there, but I don't think it's really going to challenge Hoban all that much. And then you look over the other side, if they can then get past Hoban, well, then they either have undefeated Hudson or Riverside likely coming out of the other half of this bracket. So, or we could potentially see Walsh Jesuit go on a massive run. This is a really competitive region, and Nordonia is a team not to be overlooked on that side either. This is going to be a very hard road for Fitch to manage if they're going to make this to a state semifinal and beyond. They have to really go out there and probably beat a better 3 or 4 teams than anybody else is going to have to see in this postseason.
Yeah, like I just think it speaks to what you said about the region they're in, because obviously when you're a 9-1 team, you're up towards the top of the rankings in that part of the bracket, so they didn't have to worry about it. But at least for the first round, they don't have, it wasn't their, it's not their fault who they're going to be matching up against potentially if they start moving forward. So if you're Fitch, I know you often hear this from everybody in the playoffs on any level, but you got to take 1 week at a time because it's survival mode. Just win one in advance, because when you're going through a stretch like that, potentially that's going to be pretty taxing.
Well, I think one thing for Fitch here is this is why they built the schedule they did. They knew that the playoff was going to be grind. I mean, I think you've really seen this from them at every level. They aren't afraid to go out there and pull teams from Vegas or Canton or Buffalo or Massillon. I mean, they are going around trying to play the best of the best because there's not a lot of Division II schools in this region or even D3. We're a heavy D5, D6 area around here. So, I mean, they've had to go out to get these hard schedules, put together these hard schedules, but they've definitely done it to kind of get them ready for this point of the season. I mean, taking on Ursuline and taking on Canton McKinley, Madison, Washington, Foothill, Wadsworth, teams that outside of Ursuline, it's hard to scout for because, they're not in your area. You go talk to your neighbor, you go, hey, what's this Wadsworth team? Nobody around here knows except for, the handful of us that came from that region of the state. So they've done a really good job kind of expanding the styles of football that they've seen so far this season. I mean, they have seen a good mix of everything, and I think that's what makes them one of the best prepared teams for this postseason. I like Fitch here in the first round over Mayfield. I'm going to make that pick right now.
I think I pretty much already gave mine away, but I like what you're saying about the schedule, because beef up your schedule, and if you can get through it, you're going to be sitting pretty good. If you can't, then it tells you a lot about yourself, and that Fitch found out a lot about themselves this year, that they're a pretty good team going through that schedule. And we'll see better equips them for going through that stretch potentially in the playoffs.
Yeah, well, moving on to the next game, Hubbard and Girard. Mike, it's your alma mater. They're in the postseason despite some struggles here in the back half of the season. They've definitely not played their best. They go up against a team they beat in week 8 of the season in Hubbard. Once again, they get to play this game at home in front of their crowd, which I think we have seen this season has been a clear advantage for Girard. 4-2 on the road, but 3-1 when they played at home, and the one loss at home came to South Range. So again, this is a Girard team we know is good, but the one thing I worry about especially, I don't know what the status of their quarterbacks are. Last time I know, it was Dominic Talone who played against Niles. So I'm not 100% confident. That was their third string quarterback. He got put in the second half against Struthers. He played well in both games he was in, but you've definitely noticed a different Girard team take the field ever since they lost Bengala in the South Range game. I mean, it was a loss there. They lose their quarterback, lose to Poland. Their backup quarterback and Stephen Sims goes off against Hubbard, and they win that 49-14. But then Sims goes down at halftime against Struthers, and Talone has taken over the last week and a half. And they do get a win against Niles, but it was that close. And what worries me, I think, the most about that game, Niles, not an explosive offense. They put up 33 on what everyone has always considered a really great defensive team in Girard.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. If you look at their first, when they started out, 5-0, if you look at their those first 5 games, outside of that Streetsboro game when they gave 24, they clamped down on defense. And I think after that South Range game, it's been a little bit different. 19's not bad against Poland, but some others, especially that Niles game with 33 points. So obviously the quarterback situation is worrisome because that's an important position, but that's been their calling card as their defense for a long time. And I'm not saying it's bad, but it's looked a little shaky these last couple of weeks, and it's not what you want going into this season, into the postseason, when you, on the offensive side, you have problems on both sides with the quarterback and the defense.
Yeah, and on the side of Hubbard, the parts that worry me here, they lost to Girard last time, right? That's the big one. You're going back into the same environment you got not just lost, you got beat. You got whooped in Girard last time. What's that response going to be like? What's the energy from this team going to be like to go back in there to a place that they did not play good football in? Especially they went into that coming off of a shutout to Lakeview and then their defense lets up 7 touchdowns. Then they allow 20 the next week. Then 28 gets hung on them once more. But the one thing that I go back to, and I've noticed it a lot with some teams, it's this constant back and forth energy with them. You win one week, you lose the next. Win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. And that has been the storyline for Hubbard since week 3. They got the 20-8 win over Howland, and then they lost. Then they beat Struthers. Then they lost to Jefferson. Then they beat Lakeview, lost Girard, beat Niles, lost South Range. If patterns play on, which is the way I'm going to pick here, I'm taking Hubbard to pull off what would end up being ranking-wise a huge upset. This is a 3 seed versus 14. I'm going to take the 14 seeded Hubbard over Girard so long as it's Dominic Tolone at quarterback. If Stephen Sins is back out there, I like their opportunity a little better because we know what he did last time, but I don't know if he's available, and unless I do, I'm taking Hubbard in this game. I know it hasn't been a great season for him, but we talked about the lapses in Girard's defense. I saw it firsthand against Struthers. They got absolutely – this did not look like the same Girard team, Mike, that we went up to Lake and saw last year going up, and what was it, against Kirtland? Or who did we go see them play up there?
Where was that at?
It was up in Lake. I don't remember who they played last year, but you know, we went.
I know I just can't remember the name.
Oh, they played Perry. Duh.
Perry. Perry.
They went. We saw Garfield, I think, play Kirtland. That's who it was. Yeah. The following night or the following week, but you know. This isn't the same team we saw go up there. That was a strong defensive team that had some struggles on offense. This is a team that I think now they figured out a little bit of the offense early in the year, but since the loss of Bengala, the offense has gone down. And the same thing it does if you watch into college football. Iowa, great defense, but it gets worn down by the second half. It's happened with Chicago Bears defense in the NFL. Over the last 5 years, they've had really good defensive teams, but the offense can't stay on the field long enough for the defense to recharge their batteries. I think that's going to be the case here for Girard. I think they go down.
I'm surprised you're picking Hubbard. I feel like you haven't been on their bandwagon all year.
No, I have not. But the pattern plays to their favor right now. They've been going win, lose since week 3. They lost their last game. Pattern says they should win. I'm going with it, but they drop in the second round.
Well, hey, we mentioned it the other day when we first saw this matchup was announced that it's not Girard's got it at home, but it's not like it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to win because of the issues we just talked about. I'm going to pick them not because I'm from there, but I think or went to school there, but I feel like their defense. I feel like it's going to tighten up come playoff time because a lot of times the playoffs, not all the time, but you do see things tighten up where. And this is what I'm even talking about with some other teams' offenses that we're going to talk about later that have explosive offenses. You just don't tend to see that dominance all the time in the playoffs because you're playing better competition. And I think Girard, at least they have their confidence wise. And if I'm telling them that all weekend or all week during practice, I'm saying, we had this game at home. I know it was a different team back then. It was only a couple weeks ago, but a lot has changed since then. We still have this at home too because we showed we can do it. Let's go put it together again because Hubbard's looked better offensively outside of last week against South Range. Got shut out, but Girard's defense has that potential. I think Coach B's gonna have ready to go.
Well, I hope so. I hope it's a good game. And keep in mind, I mean, this is an NE8 half of the bracket. You got Girard and Hubbard, and then the winner of this one takes on the winner of Jefferson and Poland that we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show. So it's definitely one of these matchups that I think we look at and we go, winner of this one has, I think, a good shot. I wouldn't put it past Hubbard to maybe make this all the way down to what would be regional semifinals potentially. Yeah. I mean, Girard, Hubbard, Jefferson, Poland, I think realistically all have a chance to beat one another. So it's this NE8 that we have seen just turn into a blender this season. It's constantly churning out chaos, and I don't expect anything less in the playoffs. And that's another reason why I think I'm going Hubbard here. It's just this constant churning of chaos. I don't think we'll see the same outcome twice from these games, from these teams playing one another.
That's the tricky part too. And you even see that in college too, that it just doesn't, when you play a team in the regular season, they win, play them again in the conference championship potentially, it's usually a different outcome. I think it's hard to beat a team twice during the year.
Well, Mike, throw it back to Alabama, Georgia last year.
Yeah.
I mean, SEC championship, Alabama just destroyed Georgia. They made them look silly. almost lost Georgia's chance at the playoffs. They got beat so bad. And then Georgia comes back, national championship game. It's a completely different game, completely different story. That's kind of the feel I have with this one. Yeah, Gerard put it bad on him last time, but I don't see it happening twice.
Yeah, I think that I could see Gerard winning, but just not by that big of a margin.
Next game up here, Garfield on the road in Conneaut. I don't know for certain. I think 4-4-0 and goal are going to be on this game, so it's going to be a really nice broadcast up there. These are two phenomenal teams. I mean, this is crazy that this is a round one matchup because these two have looked phenomenal so far this season. I mean, I think that's just the way to put this. Garfield being the 9 seed, Conneaut's the 8. For being 8-2 teams and getting 8-9, this has been a very competitive region. South Range, obviously the top team, but a number of undefeateds. Got, I think, 3 different spots in this region alone between Garway, Edison, and South Range. A couple of 1-loss teams, a lot of 2s and 3s. This is going to be a very, very hard region to come out of. And I know Power Hour was talking a lot about South Range yesterday early on, and this region in specific on just how competitive it was. This Conneaut Garfield game, I don't think is any indication of that being broken. This is going to be as hard defense, tough as nails kind of game where you look at Conneaut, they've given up 118 points. Garfield's given up 160. Really, the big differentiator between the two is the offense. Well, Conneaut has been a solely defensive-based team with just 278 points scored on the offensive side. Garfield has scored 392 points as an offense, so you can clearly see a big differential there, over 100 points more scored and only about 30 more given up for Garfield's defense, and that comes with more possessions thanks to your offensive side. But, I look at these two teams. In Garfield's only losses, Brookfield, who is a 5 seed in Division 6, and JFK, who's a 1 seed in Division 7, so not bad losses. Conneaut for them, they lost to Northeast PA by 2 points, which was a stunning upset. Northeast is a 2-7 team, and then the only other loss came back in week 1 in August to a now 6-4 Conneaut by 1 point. It has been a combined 3 points that Conneaut has lost by this season. In Garfield, it's been a little bit more. 20 points is their combined loss, thanks to Brookfield dropping them 35-14, but it was only a 1-point loss to JFK. So both of these two teams, very good teams, very physical. And I think maybe the one guarantee we have out of this game, it's coming down to the last minute. Whoever has the ball last might end up winning this game.
And I think this is probably one of the few games of this opening round that you could probably say it about, because I know, Garfield's offenses look better, but I think this is about as even as you can get, because especially with Conneaut, I'm looking through their schedule, and I keep saying this about teams that, especially going into the playoffs this time of year, being able to win in different types of games, because they've won in blowouts and they've won in close games. That actually, their last game was just 13-6 games, so they've been in close games, ugly games, and they've been in some games that have been high scoring, kind of shootout type of games. Not many, but they've been in 1 or 2 that I'm looking at their scores. So being able to win in all kinds of ways, being able to win against teams potentially like Brookfield, kind of setting yourself up for Garfield, about, being able to set up yourself to beat teams like that. It's what you want to come down playoffs.
I guess the only part of this I do worry about when you talk about Garfield in close games, you really only see 2. Lakeview, they won 17-7. You look at that now and you're like, ooh, Lakeview played them a lot better than they should have. And JFK, the 1-point game. So they were in a close game that they won against a bad team, close game that they lost against a really good team. So you almost wonder if Garfield gets trapped in one of those low-scoring games, especially here against Conneaut's defense, how are they going to fare? Because we know Conneaut can play low-scoring football. Obviously, 2 losses in low-scoring football, but, 3-point win to Western Reserve. And again, it's one of those games you look on, you're like, really? Should that have been that close of a game? And then just last week against Harbor Creek out of PEA, 13-6. I know Harbor Creek is just 2-7. So obviously a couple of these close games, definitely head scratchers for Conneaut, which ultimately those head scratchers are why I'm going to take Garfield in this matchup. But I definitely think this is a game that has high potential to come down to that final drive or final quarter either way. And then I think it leaves a question mark because neither one of these teams have been kind of in this situation all year. They've had a lot of dominant performances.
Yeah, and I think Garfield. I'm sorry, I keep saying Brookfield. Garfield has that because I know I just talked about Coney outside and they've been in different types of games, but I think if it comes down to a lax play type of game where I think it's going to, I think I favors Garfield because they have that extra little bit of power on offense that I think that's kind of what carried them all year. It's from what we've been talking about them all year. So for that reason, I got to go Garfield.
I like to hear it. All right, we've talked about 3 games. We got a lot more to go. We're going to take a quick step aside, a word from our sponsors here on the network. We come back. We got JFK, Canfield, Valley Christian, and so much more. So make sure you stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I support police funding, securing our borders, and parental rights in education. I'm attorney Mark Hanni, the only Republican running for the 7th District Court of Appeals. I will always follow the law.
Paid for by the committee to elect Mark Hanni judge. Dave Johnson, chairman.
Fall is in the air. The kids are back to school, crowds are cheering for the home team, and Myers Family Insurance is prepped for another crazy Medicare season. Every year there's changes, some big, some small, so it's important to have a conversation to make sure your plan is going to meet your expectations for the coming year. Give our team a call today to schedule your annual review.
For all your Medicare needs, call Myers Family Insurance or visit us on the web. Check us out online at myersfamilyins.com.
Locally owned and operated, Sheely's relaxed shopping experience means browsing and lounging is always encouraged.
Find Flex Deal and more at Sheely's Furniture and Appliance, because the best things in life happen at home.
I'm Mark Hanni, a conservative Republican. I believe in family values, the Second Amendment, and our Constitution. Vote for the only Republican running for the 7th District Court of Appeals. Protect your rights. Vote Hanni for judge.
Welcome back. And I'm Alec Brennan. That's Mike Wolfgang. That's the high school football playoff extravaganza. We've talked Fitch, Mayfield, Gerard Hubbard, Garfield, Conneaut. Got to speed it up a little bit. We've gone 3 games in 30 minutes, so we're clearly right on pace for where we want to be. Don't worry, this next name, not going to be very hard to pick. Warren JFK playing host to Fairport Harbor. It's a 1 versus 18 seed. Mike, I have no quarrels with Harding. I've liked him here at the end of the season, but they are just not on JFK's level, which is a whole step above probably the rest of Division 7. It's kind of crazy that JFK is a D6 team, or pardon me, is a D7 team, because they ultimately play like D5. They play upper division teams all the time. I almost would like to see them find a way to move up, but I think there's going to be a deep run in place for JFK, and I think it all starts here. I'm not calling for a shutout, but after a 50-0 shutout in Week 10 over Ravenna, I'm going Eagles.
Yeah, too, and building up your schedule, going against strength of schedule, it's one thing, but they hold their own against it. Like they beat Garfield this year, a lot of other good teams that they beat, and they've held their own. So it's one thing to kind of schedule it and try to see where you're at, measuring stick, as we just talked about with some other teams. JFK fares well when they do this, and they have done it for a couple years now, and they've been in long playoff runs. So I definitely do like them in this first round matchup.
All right, next one up here. Canfield taking on New Philadelphia. About 7 or 60 miles separate these two schools. One of our farthest distance playoff games, especially that we've talked about up to this point. It's a game for Canfield. I think we already kind of look at it. You go, all right, should be favored in this one. New Philly played it close to Dover in Week 10. It was 21-20, a team Canfield saw back in Week 7. They won it 2014, also went to overtime in that game. So the one common opponent on the schedule, it makes this look very, very close. New Philadelphia, though, 6-4, losses to playoff team Steubenville. They got shut out to a 4-6 Worcester. back in week 3. They also lost to Mansfield Senior in week 5, 25-10. Mansfield Senior, an 8-2 team. They're in the postseason as well. And then a week 9 dominant loss. They lost to maybe the best team in the state, who scored 500 points on the offensive side out of Millersburg, Ohio, the West Holmes Knights, who's a perfect 10-0, and they won that game 60-7. So I think this is a big measuring stick kind of game for Canfield. They should be heavy favorite. State rankings favor them, division rankings favor them, playoff seeding favors them. And you look at New Philly, they're 2-2 when they've gone on the road. Canfield hasn't lost at home. Give me the Cards.
Yeah, I like them, especially at home, like you just closed out with. They're a pretty good team at home. They're a pretty good team anywhere. But against a team like New Philadelphia, that's kind of not long distance away, but more of a distance that you're used to. Not playing a team that you're not used to seeing. It's kind of, in the playoffs, it's kind of what you get sometimes. You kind of get some closer matchups, but I like them against a team like this. It's no shot against New Philadelphia, but I think Canfield is one of the stronger teams we have around here, and they got the home game too. So I got to go with Canfield. Yeah,
I was just looking at this West Holmes team. They're the second place team behind Glenville for Region 14. So they probably could be sitting a little bit high. So that's what, Division 4?
Yeah.
Okay. That's still a really good team. That's huge. Either way, I like Canfield to get it started. Maybe somebody sees that West Holmes team down the line if they get past Glenville, which I don't know if that's likely. Glenville's always awesome at football.
Yeah.
But next one up, back over into the NE8. One of probably, well, I guess not, because we're going to see this another NE8 conference matchup next week in this bracket, but it's Jefferson versus Poland. Winner gets the winner of Girard versus Hubbard. Mike, this is a game I'm kind of torn on, kind of not torn on, because we've seen a bit of a losing skid from Poland here in the final 2 weeks of the season, and they've kind of had struggles the last 4 games. I mean, 21-19, they just couldn't get over Girard. 9-0, they beat, or pardon me, 21-19, they just got over Girard. 9-0, they barely could get anything going against Lakeview, and they come out, they lose to this Jefferson team in week 8, 27-13. They get almost shut out to Struthers on the road. Now they're back on the road. They lost to Jefferson when they were the home team. Now you have to send this group on the road, a team that has not played well when they've been on the road, 2-3 record when they've done so, and the wins have come against Louisville and Lakeview when they've gone. I mean, losses, Struthers, South Range, and Canfield. It's obviously not an easy road slate for them, but this isn't going to be an easy game. I kind of like Jefferson right now as one of these teams we look at to make a run, because I think personally they could take down Hubbard as well and give themselves an opportunity, maybe against Beaver or Canton South, whoever comes out. Some of these other games we're going to talk about, maybe Salem. I almost like them there as well. I think there's an opportunity that we have an NE8 team in the regional championship, and I kind of like Jefferson to be that group at the moment. I know 440 and goal have been very high on them, continue to push them along despite some midseason struggles for them with losses to Girard, Struthers, and South Range. But I like Jefferson right now. I was high on them beginning of the year. I'm ready to see it pop back into action. When you're playing up on the lake there this time of year, it's never a good thing for their opponent.
Yeah, and I think, they had those back-to-back losses against Struthers and South Range, but South Range, we know how they beat the horse with that. We know how good they are. It's a pretty dominant win. And Struthers, we've been talking about them for a couple weeks, that they are looking like a strong team, and that was a
climb, baby. Trust the climb.
Yeah, and that was a strong game for them. That was a pretty big margin of victory. And then that Girard game early in the year, they lost 21-6. That's not they played pretty well on defense, only holding them to 21 points that time of year for that different Girard team, but they couldn't get the offense going. I think they've kind of started to pick things up here down the stretch. And I think Jefferson has that potential. If they can get it going on offense, they're going to be pretty hard to handle in the playoffs. And I think, like you just said, with any 8 teams, I think they got to be up there at least with the favorites to make a deep run.
With probably the most competitive conference schedule that you're going to see from any team, I think they have to be looked at as some of the favorites to continue making chaos happen, because it's all we've seen out of this conference all season long. I expect South Range, to being the head of the division, to make a deep run because they've weathered those storms by heavy fashion. I mean, no one's been within single digits of South Range all season long, but I expect teams like Jefferson, Hubbard, Poland, these teams right here that we're talking about, if they can get out of this NE8 slate, I mean, you're already getting into the third round of the playoffs, and you only have to keep beating conference opponents. And then you still have local teams after that, and potentially Beaver or Salem that you could eventually go up against as well to propel yourself in the regional semifinal to make it to a regional championship. I mean, the path is clear for these NE8 teams, and they don't really have to see any of these uncommon opponents that we're seeing in a lot of other places.
Yeah, and preparing yourself all year against tough matchup week after week. That's what this conference is. And I think that regardless if they play each other in the playoffs, and if they don't, whether they win or not, that equips them to go through tough matchups.
Yeah. Next game up, this will be my game, played now in Boardman, just the fourth time these two teams have ever met. Circumstances were a little bit different the last couple times around. I believe it's been playoff games, 2 of the 3 matchups. Back in 2009 was the first matchup between Valley Christian and Trinity. Trinity won 41-7. Valley beat them in 2015 postseason, 21-20. 2016, Trinity got the best of them, 21-0 in the postseason. A lot has changed since then for both of these teams. Last couple times around, Mike, Trinity was the better of the two teams. In 2015, Valley was 1-9 in that season. 2016, they were 2-7. 2009, they were 6-4. It's a much different Valley Christian team than the last time they win a couple of rounds with Trinity in the postseason. Valley Christian is on a magnificent run here. But as I mentioned early on in the show, what concerns me, new environment. This game is in Boardman instead of Canfield. A struggle here in cold weather. They haven't played their level of football here in the cold. Their defense that showed up. I mean, round of applause to this defense. They've allowed 24 points in the last 2 weeks here in colder weather games. And their offense is the part that bothers me. It's been slow to get going. They've been waiting till the second half, third, fourth quarters to really get this train moving. In 3, they did not play in week 10. I know it was against East Palestine, but it would have been a tune-up game. They have had 2 weeks to let everything that went wrong against Wellsville churn inside of their brains. I know Andy Hake has been using this, as fuel to the fire for this team. The city's team, they represent Southside. I hope that they're going to get a big crowd here at Boardman, being a little bit closer to their school than normal. I mean, they're down the street now from where they go to school and from where they practice. So I'm hoping they get a little bit more people coming to this game. It's a Friday matchup for them. They haven't played a lot of Friday games so far in the schedule. I mean, I tell you that they have played a decent amount, but, their home games are played on Saturdays. So, you look at that and you do have some of those question marks. I mean, this is kind of a new feel for Valley Christian. You're no longer the underdog. You are the runaway expected favorite. I'm curious on how they manage that mentality to go in here. And then for Trinity, pressure's off for it. They do not, no one expects them to win this game. They haven't beaten anybody good. They have a 1-point win over Beechwood, a 1-point win over Independence, a 2-point win over Brooklyn, and a larger 35-point win over Wycliffe. But their losses are to the other Western Reserve team here in the state of Ohio. They lost to Lutheran West out up in Rocky River. And then early in the season, they lost to Hawken, who's is going up against Ursuline. Chagrin Falls, who was a 17 seed, just fell in behind Liberty out of the playoffs. They lost to Burton Berkshire, decent team. But the one I circle on this schedule that gives me any sort of inclination of what this game could be, Cuyahoga Heights, because it's who Valley Christian took on in the postseason last year. At the moment, it looks like who Valley Christian could take on in the second round of the postseason again this year. And Cuyahoga Heights was on a similar level in that postseason. It was a 1-point game last time around between Valley and Cuyahoga Heights. The Heights beat this Trinity team 17-0. That's what I'm expecting to see. I expect Valley Christian's offense to get going. If they're going to make the deep run that we all expect them to here in the postseason, it starts and ends with their offensive production that we have seen stall out the last couple of weeks of the season.
Yeah, stall out, and it wasn't even close to being that thought in those first couple games before these last two, that they were putting up at least 40 a game on people.
Yep.
in mid-30s. So it's definitely slowed down here. I mean, Southern's a good team. You expect things to kind of take a hit there, but I expect
I against Wellsville. That was a big one.
Yeah, and there you go with that one. But I think them having an extra week to prepare, sometimes it hurts people, sometimes it doesn't. But I gotta believe with Andy Hake in this group that they weren't just sitting on things. They know they need to wake things up on offense, get back to where they were, and I think they're going to do that in this game. I got Valley Christian.
If anybody doesn't come out here thinking Andy Hake is going to have these boys on fire, you're out of your mind.
You just don't know him.
Yeah, I mean, I was walking with him before the Southern game. I mean, he pulled me back to the locker room. He basically wanted me to shadow him all before this game, just to get this feel of the team when they played Southern. And basically what he was telling me before that game is that he could have made his boys 10 times more ready to go. Maybe he should have before that game, and they still come out with the win late in it. But this is one of the few head coaches, I think, out of every coach I've seen, that controls his team with so much intensity,
emotional
intensity, that he single-handedly, depending on what his pregame speech is, could change the outcome of a game. He could make this Valley Christian team go from being 0-10 to 10-0 in 2 years, which is almost what he did. They weren't quite 0-10 a couple seasons ago before he took over, but it took 2 seasons to get here. And that comes from the emotional intensity that Andy Hake brings to the game. He is the biggest believer in his team out there on the field, and it shows up. It shows up pregame when I've heard him on the sidelines, the mic'd up segments we've done with him. Everything about Andy Hake is always 100%. And he kept telling me before Southern, should I light this team up? Should I light the fire on them and get them ready to go? I didn't want to answer that one because I was like, I don't know what that'll do. It's too big of a game for this to be left in a broadcaster's hand. But the fire has to have been lit after Wellsville. I don't even think this was a fire he had to light. These players know they're better than that. These players know they shouldn't have had a letdown that week. They survived the letdown. We always talk about it. You're going to have it. Can you survive it? South Range survived theirs 23-13 against Struthers early in the year. Valley Christian survived theirs against Wellsville 24-18. Now you're in the postseason, and everyone wants to go, erase everything else. Andy Hake's not going to let that happen. Andy Hake is not going to let that game against Wellsville go that easily. He's going to make sure that if anything starts to fall apart in this game, that he just goes, boys, remember what you've done the last 2 weeks. You have had to come from behind the last 2 weeks. There has to be just a monumental wave of emotion for this team coming into this week. And I think that only plays bad for Trinity, because when this team plays emotionally invested, they are the best team in Division VI football.
And what you love about what you just said about Hake, and what you love is it never seems like that fire ever goes out. If you watch his interviews that DJ does with him, or people on the network or other networks do with him, he has a message for literally everything he says. And when you have that, and when you have a coach that his message never goes still, that's why I like him in this matchup, because the last 2 weeks have not been pretty. They've not been what he expected out of them, but they've found ways to win, and they've had an extra week to prepare and sit on that. So his message just never gets old. He's a coach that you want to play for.
Yeah, he is. That's been a big message. People want to play for this guy.
Yeah,
and he's brought something special out of every one of those players that I don't know if they realized in themselves before he got there. Andy Hake didn't make these players what they are. Those players made the players what they are. He just showed them how to get there.
Yeah.
And he's brought that extra level out of every single guy on that team. That's what makes them special. That is why they are so much better than they have been in the past. 90% comes from the ability of the coach to just get the player to play to their potential, because these players obviously are phenomenal. And all the credit, Andy Hake will always say, all the credit goes to these players, and then the players will come back around and go, hey, give the credit to my coaches, man. Their willingness to teach me on everything, advise me here and there. It's this humble back and forth between coaches and players, a true sign of respect of why I've seen this team be so miles ahead of every other group I've seen. And that's not a diss at other teams, because I think there have been some really great teams, some really great relationships with coaches and players that I have seen throughout the season. but I don't think I've seen anybody match that bond that Andy Hake has with his team.
And that almost always adds up to success when it's an even balance of, knowing what you're doing, but giving the credits, kind of pushing it off to other people, the coaches, your other players too, because when it's a selfless group, Alec, that almost always adds up to success. And that's what this group is.
Yeah. And, I did an interview with Jordan Peete after his first start of the season, and he had a really great game. And from day one of the starting quarterback, I mean, that's the position that everything can get to your head instantaneously.
Yeah.
First thing he did in that interview was just go, I have really great teammates all around. They did everything for me today. And it was just like right away, it's this instant buy-in with this group that you really love. I'm taking Valley Christian. I don't know if they've picked up on this in the last couple minutes, but I'm taking Valley. I'm taking them in round 2 against Cuyahoga Heights. I don't care. I'm taking them over Mogador, and damn it, I'm taking them over Kirtland. They're going to state, baby. This team is playing in Canton. Book it. I'm buying my tickets to this game. I'm going to be there November 26th. I am going to be in Canton, and Valley Christian is going to be the reason why.
And then you'll pick them against whoever's there.
Damn right.
Yep.
Next game, we have Catholic Central Crusaders out of Steubenville taking on the Ville. I mean, we're talking back-to-back teams that I have just been fascinated with this season. Lowellville, baby, this is an easy pick. I don't know how much I need to go into it. This ain't going to be close. The Ville's going to hang 100 on them. Rockets all the way. To the moon, baby, to the moon.
Yeah, they're definitely going to soar, and I expect them to soar a good amount of obviously that potential maybe to get to Canton, but I think they have what it takes to get there. Obviously it's week by week in the playoffs, but we talked about them the other day. We've talked about them for weeks, the whole season. I don't what else there what to say about them because they've done everything they've been supposed to do. Obviously, like I said to start, their offense taking a little bit of a step back, but they're still playing good on offense. It's not going to be worrisome. That's how they win games, and they hold teams, especially the last couple of weeks. You could talk about the teams they played, whatever. They've been playing on both sides, too. It's just not the offense. So they're a strong team. They're a team to really look out for. If you're looking for teams around here to make runs, they're one of them.
They are. And, Mike, I'm looking ahead right now. I know we shouldn't do that all the way, but November 19th, 7 p.m. game. We don't know the location of where it'll be, but it's the regional championship game. And I have a strong feeling it's going to be the Ville and it's going to be Warren JFK in that matchup. And we obviously don't know where this is going to be, but I know the perfect location, about as center as you can get, the Ice Castle. Put this downtown. It just about splits the drive between the two schools of Lowellville and Warren JFK. It might be a little bit longer for JFK, but not by much. Massive environment, should hold everybody just fine. Youngstown State has a noon game. This game won't happen until 7 o'clock. I'm booking that one. So I need to give a call to OHSAA. They need my ideas here.
And we'll call YSU too to try to get that straightened out.
Right. Hey. Yeah, we got the right game for it. All right.
Yeah.
Lowellville, JFK, two local teams. You're going to have more people at this game than you'll have for any Penguin game all season long because your attendance numbers have been down.
Bad.
Yeah, it's not good. I'm a problem there. I haven't gone to any this season. I've been busy on Saturdays, but
that's all right. You're calling games.
Yeah.
Doing some other stuff. But and especially when you're talking about putting a game next season too.
I take the Rockets there, by the way, too.
Probably that'd be a toss-up, but
it would be.
But anyway, it'd be if you're putting that game there. That's what you're just saying. What I just said with it being a toss-up. Those are two of the best teams that are around here. Potentially meeting at that point in the playoffs, and why not put it at a stadium like that? Because they usually do put good playoff games there. Obviously, you have to put it at a college stadium, but that's a really good one.
And it's the biggest stadium in the region, so I mean, it's not like there's one around here that would fill better, unless they were just going to put it at Warren G. Harding. Yeah, but I feel like that would be too much of a home field advantage, so I don't think they would do that.
Yeah.
Next game up, Hawken, 8-2, taking on Ursuline, who's 8-2. This is a pretty big matchup here for the Ursuline Irish, and it's a 3 versus 14 seed, and a big reason of why this is a 14 seed at Hawken at 8-2, strength of schedule. However, their 2 losses have been by a combined 2 touchdowns to Gilmore Academy in what was a big upset. Actually, not an upset. Gilmore Academy is at 9-1, and then they lost to Harvey down in week 9, who has fallen to 5-5. They've had some struggles since their loss to Cheney, but overall, this is solid Hawkins team that just hasn't had the strength of schedule. Plus, they beat that Trinity we were just talking about early in the year, 35-0. They then beat Chippewa out of Doylestown 24-0 before their loss to Gilmore Academy. Very strong defensive team. This is going to be one of the biggest 3v14 matchups outside of Girard that I think we're going to see. I'm not pulling an upset here. I'm going Ursuline. I think they've been very impressive this season. And I constantly go back to what I've heard from coaches, and it was in week 2. And really the entire season when I've talked to Randy Clark, and he's the only coach I know that's had the experience against Ursuline that I've had the pleasure of talking to. And it's just, he's only just continued to push. Hey, that's the best offensive and defensive line anywhere in the state. You're not getting any better than that. And that's high praise coming from a coach that has been in this business a long time and has seen some really, really good teams and knows just about every coach out there, it seems. So, from getting that kind of high praise from a guy like Clark about this team, from what we've seen, the level of talent that they have at the quarterback spot with DC Farrell, who's just a sophomore who put together a pretty great season. Erickson's obviously done phenomenal as well for this group. It's a very talented all-around team. And Lynch on the ground with almost 1,500 yards, just shy of 20 touchdowns. Bernie's been a phenomenal wide receiver alongside Farrell. This is a very exciting team, and I have no problem seeing this group make the deep run that I think we all expect out of them. Potential matchup against Talmadge next week. I know a lot of people from back home have been begging me to try and get on that game. I told them it's not happening. I'm riding Valley Christian to state. But, best of luck there to Ursuline. Talmadge is one heck of a team. My mom knows the coach of that Talmadge squad, and they've been talking about it. They want Ursuline. We'll see if Ursuline wants them.
Yeah, this Ursuline squad has been impressive all year. I mean, I know that Fish game, they're getting blown out for most of it, but the ability to come back, that's something to look at. And the St. P's loss was only by 7. So, and everything else, they pretty much look pretty good and pretty dominant. And so I like the Ursuline team. I think they're strong. Like you just ran through all their athletes on offense. I think they're a good team overall. I'm riding Ursuline with this one.
Next one up here, Salem and Canton South. Pretty big game here, and this one I've kind of been torn on for quite some time, trying to think about it, because Salem is a 10 seed, Canton South is a 7. So I mean, there are some clear numbers right around one another for the 7-3 Canton South crew. Had a couple of close games. They won 21-20 over Northwest last week. They lost the week before to Orville. They haven't had a super strength of schedule. They've played some really close games, though, all the way through. And it's a team that really can go either way. I mean, they put up 426 points offensively, but allowed 293. Salem's put up 340, allowed 244. But you saw how close they were this past week on Saturday against West Branch. We know this crowd is going to travel well. They're going to be down there at this game. I have no doubt about it. No one has gotten the better of Salem by a big margin. Even if Canton South can pull this thing off, I don't think it's by a big margin. I don't think either team wins by more than a touchdown in this game, because that just hasn't been the case for either crew. In a shootout type game, I'll say it, Salem hasn't fared the best. I mean, I lost to West Branch in the shootout, lost to Carrollton in the shootout, lost to Alliance in the shootout, lost to Canton Central Catholic in the shootout, beat Padua Franciscan in a lower scoring shootout, but it ended 23-21. Padua finished 5-5. So it's a team right now in Salem I don't have a ton of confidence behind. However, I have confidence in this roster. I think it is really what I feel strongly behind, because they've played well as a team. They've played a hard schedule. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here. I'm taking Salem over Canton South.
Yeah, but there's definitely the question marks too, because a lot of the games, especially the first couple to start the season out, they weren't against great competition. And shootout games, but I think this has the potential to, like you ran through, it doesn't have to, they haven't fared well in that. But I think, going against putting in those challenges too, that, only losing by 5 to Carrollton in that big shootout, only losing by 10 to West Branch in that big shootout. They're right there. And I think they have they have what it takes to try. They've been through enough, failures with that this year to try to say, hey, we know what to do if it gets to this point of the game. If it gets to a shootout, we can run these type of plays. I think I like Salem in this one, but it's kind of, I'm not confident in it, but I think I do want to go with Salem in this one.
I like it. Well, Those are the games we got for today. I'm going to save the next two for tomorrow because we don't have quite enough time to it. I'll be running solo on tomorrow's show. Mike, before we wrap out of here, I'm going to let you take the stage here for the highlight of the week. Whatever you want to give it out, I'll give mine out tomorrow.
I guess I'll go Caps home opener because I was at it, and it was pretty good. Seeing Mitchell, actually, not the whole week. Actually, it was the past week because starting the first 3 games, dropping 30 points at least. That's a Cavs record, and a lot of people haven't done that on new teams. So I guess I'll go with Donovan Mitchell with his first week of being a Cavalier.
Yeah, I mean, over 100 points in his first 3 games with the Cavs. I mean, talk about coming out with a bang and just going, welcome aboard. It's Donnie Mitch time. We'll see how they continue. I'm excited to watch him. Honestly, I mean, they have been really great to see. I watched the first half of the game last night before I clocked out early. But, I found a way to catch just a little bit of at least every part of the game. And every time, as I've kind of reiterated this season, they're just fun to watch. Yeah. And, it's sometimes it doesn't feel like I'm even watching it just to see them win. I just want to see them play. They're really exciting. And, I know a lot of people don't really love the NBA anymore. It's definitely lost some viewership from, I think some of the older crowds have started to tune away from it. But I think it's really grown amongst youngsters. I mean, there's definitely a huge following there. It's one of the biggest growing sports. But they're one of those teams I think that you're going to see in the next 15 years. If they continue playing like this over the next few seasons, the fan base behind Cleveland is going to grow astronomically with how young of a fan base is around and still very shapeable. And it's all shapeable. I mean, if you want this fan base to grow, if Cleveland wants to become a large market basketball team, it all comes with a team like this. I mean, you have superstars galore, all-stars across the floor. Your starting 5 is basically also say a lower tier all-star roster. So, I mean, they got to get it done.
Yeah.
But it's fun to watch. And Donovan
Very
Mitchell
fun.
slam dunk last night was sick.
It was sweet. And he had that one kind of towards you. I think it was when he got his 30th point in the home opener. It was a steal, fast break dunk. It was pretty sweet.
And how about Robin Lopez the game before last? Basically,
throwing it up.
It was on his butt, just throwing it up behind his head, and it somehow goes in off the backboard. Called bank on it, and then see Moondog before this game. He did a shot of his own from half court.
He usually does. I've noticed, just watched him over the years, that he normally does that. Doesn't always make them, but that's just something he usually does pregame rituals. But yeah, I did see that last night.
Well, Robin Lopez, notorious against those mascots, so.
He likes Moondog, though. He made that clear media day. That
okay. We won't see any inter-team fights between Moondog and Robin Lopez.
Yeah.
Although he gives you kind of that new thought of the new Wild thing in Cleveland. Because
I was going to say that too.
Bearshow. I mean, he's got the big hair. I don't know where they're from. Do you know where they're from?
I don't, but I do get that vibe though for sure. Unorthodox, kind of plays good defense. That was Andy's game.
He's from LA. I don't know where their family's from, though.
Maybe they're from somewhere else, but I just thought with the Lopez, it's not always an American name.
Cuban, so
yeah,
or at least is a Cuban baseball player.
There you go. Well, we're happy to have him.
Yeah, crazy. I love it. Cavs have been great. I'm Alec. That's Mike. Today's show has been great. Tomorrow's going to be great. Tomorrow night's going to be great, and then I'm hoping the weekend's going to get capped off with Ohio State beating Penn State, but that's all the time we have for today on
you
the
had to squeeze that in.
Podcast. I did. Power Hour coming up next on your sports network.